Sorry about that, Charles. There you go.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
We were just wondering what happened to you.
No, I didn't realize it was 7:14 already.
Yeah, that beats our time by 1 minute, right, Alan?
Yep,
Your college professor time.
you got it.
Yes.
Bill let me know that he wouldn't be able to make it.
I saw his, Bill.
No, that was Ed.
Ed,
Bill
yeah.
called me a while ago. He was having trouble with his computer, which is why he didn't email.
Wow.
So it's just the four of us, unless we count Glenn twice, in which case it's five of us.
Then you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep,
Did we have a meeting last month?
yes.
Because I couldn't get on. I think somebody else said they had the same problem.
Bill,
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Missed you. So
are we officially calling the meeting to order?
We have a motion to commence the May Village of Amerenik Budget Advisory Committee meeting.
I make a motion to open the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Bear with me 1 second. Sharing the screen. One more time. Can you guys see the screen okay?
yep,
Yep.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the April meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
And do we have a second?
Someone-
Yes.
Thank you, Len.
All those in favor?
What about March?
We did that.
We
last
did
month.
those? Oh, because those minutes were being circulated. I was,
No,
Maybe.
that's, no, Robert, you never sent in the approved minutes. And that's what he was looking for, which is why I finally sent that in the middle of us sending the April draft. So that's probably the confusion.
all right, okay, well, I was a bit confused, so.
And I'll take the minutes tonight since it's Bill's turn and he's not here. And I will forward the minutes on Ed's behalf from last month.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yep.
So thanks for jumping in, Dan. I was able to review. Can you see my screen okay with
Yep.
the resolution, if you will? And I thought we could just recap. I did listen to the recap on the YouTube LMC TV. Did anybody else have an opportunity to listen to this particular meeting on the 25th? Nobody else did? Okay.
I listened, I was on for the actual board meeting.
Okay.
What are you, sorry, I got distracted. What were you asking, Charles?
If anybody else had a chance to either live or by a replay review the meeting that I had pulled up, which was the April 25th meeting.
The trustees? Yeah, I watched it.
You did. Okay. So this was the corresponding document, and item A was effectively a resolution to adopt what was the draft 22-23 and have that be a final budget.
Yeah, with adoptions, they had made 2 weeks, a couple of weeks, they did make some changes at their final work session.
Actually, to that point, one of the recommendations, and Dan Sarnoff, I hope you remember this, because when it's time, I'll probably forget. We were very quick on publicizing wherever we could that the tax rate will be lower, and that was based on the initial draft budget. And I only made it to a couple of the department head meetings, but it seems some folks at that time, while reviewing their tentative budget, they were then asking for additional staff or other items that were increasing the budget. And the board was approving it. So what I would recommend, so we as a village don't say rah, rah, our tax rate is decreasing when in fact it's not decreasing. We ask the department heads that in their first input for the draft budget, they include their wish list and explain it during the department meetings. And if the board doesn't approve it, then take it out. It only makes the situation better, not worse.
Yeah, that's where there's a slight, difference in the process in that, the tentative budget is the village manager's budget. So,
Okay,
he's not going to just approve salary increases like that. So it gets a little,
no, but maybe if it's something like I was on with the court, where they were asking for 1.5 people or whatever it was, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. If requests like that can be submitted when it's Jerry's budget, so Jerry knows where to adjust.
yeah.
Because that no matter where you looked, it was on Nextdoor, it was in emails, it was all over the place that our tax rate's coming down.
So
And it's said based on the tentative budget, but that kind of sets its tone.
So the functional tax rate, I still believe is going down. It's the levy is going up, but how the rate is calculated, the rate's based on the overall value.
Yep,
So when the overall value changes or increases to such a large extent, the tax rate we need to generate the revenue needed functionally goes down.
right. I thought it was going up a little. I may be wrong.
Oh, I can't recall exactly, but
I,
Yeah.
But I
I-
think, hang on, Glenn. Wait, Glenn, wait a minute. Dan, I think you understand my intent, though.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do.
Okay,
But it's just one of those, it's like I said, the functional rate is going down, but most people wouldn't see a decrease in their overall.
right. No, but I thought the
Yeah, value
functional
increase.
rate ended up going up a little as opposed to going down.
It's quite possible. I mean, I know the several of the items that the board wanted to put back in were moving annual purchase items that were in the capital budget to the general fund. So
And it was also adding a couple of staff members.
I don't think it added additional staff
Yeah, it did.
members from what was recommended at tentative budget, but there was some salary increases above and beyond.
I
Like the
thought
two
the
and a half
court added staff, but Glenn, you're the data junkie. Do you remember?
Yeah, most of the positions that they were looking for were already put in the tentative budget by Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay,
There were a couple of salary adjustments that happened with the court, and there was another
An assistant building inspector.
to the building inspector.
Yeah.
The biggest change was we took about $320 or $330,000 that was in the capital budget that is actual, perennial costs like software, other such items, and we actually put them into the budget. So that brought the budget just under the 2% cap.
Right, so the tax rate is going up then.
Well, they passed a resolution to exceed the tax cap. Is that correct, Dan?
No, when we
Yeah.
got to that in the Board of Trustees, they said we're not exceeding the cap. So there's no
Okay.
point in discussing that,
Okay,
which is why I joined the meeting, because that had me panicked. What-
yes, I saw that. I didn't go to the meeting, but I saw that.
Have that just in case. And then what they did was took no action, means it just dies until next.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But the tentative budget looked like we were in pretty good shape. There was all this, everyone seemed very happy at the tentative budget stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that were added to the budget were based on, it's really I think I'm gonna chalk 98% of it up to the policy directive to include some of those, as Glenn referred to, the perennial items, putting them in some cases back into the general fund budget where they had existed for many years.
I just think from a public relations perspective, we tootle our horn too soon. That's all.
That's
Yeah, that was
I'm not gonna, I can't,
I know.
I'm separating an elected official from the ability to,
No, I know, I'm just commenting. It's all about managing expectations, in whatever we do. So now people are expecting to see the tax rate decrease by whatever percent we publicized, and it's not gonna happen. So that's all.
Yeah, in the meantime, there was a revalve, so like my house, 11% higher, so I was going up anyway.
yes, but your taxes being higher will lower them for someone else, Glenn.
Oh, no, everybody
Take solace in that.
yeah, everybody went up.
But setting aside all the math here about the value of the property to be taxed and the tax rate, I'm a homeowner. Will my tax bill go up or down from the prior year?
All things being equal, it will go up.
Okay,
Well,
so
it
But even
depends.
still,
the whole-
that-
No, it depends where your house value, when it got reassessed.
well, that's why I said all things being equal.
yeah,
Okay.
But
Well, assuming-
but even under the tentative budget, the average person's tax bill was gonna go up.
yes, that's right. I remember.
Yeah.
So all this talk about tax rate and blah, blah, blah. Quite frankly, to my neighbors, they don't care about that. They just want to know, are they paying more or less?
Right, and some of the subject lines in the email said taxes are going down, and then when you read the body, it said tax rate. It was very misleading, I thought.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing that should matter is what people end up paying.
Yep,
No.
But,
not paying or pain.
well, I had my first boss always used to say that, he wanted people to be happy when they were paying their taxes. But not because it was, but that hopefully they realized, for the bill they were, what they're paying, they're getting, quality services. So, I know that's maybe a little bit Pollyannish on my part, but that's always been the way I've looked at it.
Absolutely, but as you drive around town these days, every place is torn up.
They're trying to do it all at once now, and I mean, it's rough on the waterworks, the sewer, and Con Ed's decided to do all the gas lines exactly at the same time.
Well, where I am, they're doing all the curbing and we still have the work that's being done between 95 and the Hutch, which has been a mess for months. So just, it's a longer stretch that's a mess.
Well, that's all, that's, and
That's
it's,
not us.
I know, but, and, the county's doing their work on the curbing right now, resetting it, and then they're gonna be, doing their paving work on Mamaroneck Avenue in the village, starting around August 1.
So that's the county doing this?
Yeah, the county owns Mamaroneck Avenue,
Uh-huh.
between, well, in the village, between the border, the northern border and the railroad bridge.
Okay.
That's all county, owned road.
That's another reason they're doing a lot of the curbs. They got some money from the county for the federal government to fix the curbs. I think what is it, a 50-50 split that we
Are you talking about the CDBG program, Glenn?
that's like a 50-50 split, right?
Yeah, but that's the work we're doing on Waverly and East Prospect.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then also doing some prep work on Mamaroneck Avenue in anticipation of having the paving done. I think they're also changing a little bit of the curvature and a couple of other things.
Yeah, I mean, well, you do the curbing work first, you reset the curbs so that you can, but then you do the pavement. Because you want to have the curbing there, to, make sure we have the proper drainage once you put the new asphalt down.
Well, when they did the other paving work on Mamaroneck Avenue a couple of months back, some of the manhole covers are so far below the street. I mean, I actually saw somebody lose the bottom molding of their car.
Yeah, well, that was, I think they were just, they had to do some, basically, I don't want to say emergency work, but it was
A temp
sorely
patch until they
needed work
got to the
because of
stuff.
the winter.
Well, I hope they fix that.
It should be fixed.
That was a temp patch because it was so bad they couldn't wait until they did the actual paving in August.
Okay.
I remember that they were supposed to pave that section last October, but Ida got in the way.
Right. I'd have gotten in the way of a lot of things.
Yes, it did.
Dan, any more grants? I mean, I gave you this big nickname, the goose that lays the golden grants. I hope you're up with your reputation.
Nothing, no huge programs right now. But we were always applying for, various grant programs. I said the big ones are, the biggest one we have out there that we haven't heard back on yet is a grant for what's called a Transportation Alternatives Program grant for Halsted Avenue. We want to redo the sidewalks along Halsted between Jefferson and the Harrison border. So we submitted a grant last September. It's about just short of $5 million, of which we'd be responsible for 20%. But the state has not made any announcements yet. And the last I heard from Assemblyman Otis's office is that they are still making decisions, and basically there may be some recommendations, but now all the state elected officials are handling the DOT to get their pet projects some grant money.
Now, the Halsted Avenue project is not only a repave job, we have the old trolley tracks underneath that they have to take out and then redo the bottom surface so it's conducive to car traffic, correct?
Yeah, I mean, and those are two separate projects. But the short version, Glenn is right. The fact that we have those tracks under there means that, you know, the road base is uh, somewhat compromised. So when we repave the road, we only get maybe, you know, a third to half of the life that we should get out of it. So it's between the brick and the rails. It's pretty interesting under there.
Those old bricks might be worth a few dollars if they're intact.
Yeah,
The old cobblestone.
I know that's valuable. Yeah.
It's only valuable if you find a buyer.
Well, no, that stuff is vintage brick. You cannot get it anymore. No one makes it. It's the quality is insane of that brick.
So basically, the operating budget, they were a little aggressive, I thought, with some of the income. But again, it's a really tough call because you're finally coming out of COVID. So you know, it's just something that, you know, needs to be monitored. The you know, the trustees are aware. They'll probably look at it in October. And the other wild card is, you know, you are dealing with an increase in expenses because obviously your gas and oil went up. Your materials in some cases have gone up significantly. You know, something like the timber is up 40%, you know, for the docks, or fertilizer for the fields and everything. So it's, you know, the best estimate, and it, you know, it's what they do every year. It says they're going to pass a budget, they're going to monitor it, and they're going to make adjustments. They also have the capital budget, which if you looked at the list of the capital budget, once you took those other items out, and the fact that a couple of them are going to be are actually the sewer projects that are, you know, pretty, you know, covered, you know, by this, either the sewer fund or by grants that we have, we got somewhere right around $6.7 million worth of capital projects that we were looking to do this year. And we're going to have about $1.7 million that comes back to us in principal. So, you know, I had said that if the trustees approved the other 5 million, they could actually do all the capital projects this year and knock out the list. But that's a decision the trustees are going to have to make in a upcoming meeting or two. I'm sure that at some point, you know, Jerry and Dan will be presenting exactly what the capital spending is going to be, and then the trustees have to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't at the last budget budget meeting or budget work session. I think there's the fact that the board also wanted to, you know, in addition to, you know, the debt, wanted to, you know, look at appropriating about $600,000 in fund balance. To
Well,
knock it.
that's the operating budget.
Okay. No, I thought there was something.
And then they did appropriate, I think, $110,000 for bunker gear because they couldn't move everything out of the capital budget into the operating budget. So I either the turnout or bunker gear, what they did was they took it out of the appropriated fund because they had money there. And then next year they're planning to put that into the operating budget also.
Okay, yeah.
But the actual capital budget is, you know, would be the next thing. Hopefully it's brought up in the next month or so. And, you know, once, you know, basically what the staff waits for is for the trustees to approve either a project, or they can approve the entire list of projects and, you know, let them go. But, you know, it comes down to, are the trustees willing to appropriate how much money to work on that list? You know, I said, you know, if you did $5 million in 2 years, you're looking at about a 1% increase in your property tax. If you wanted to really realistically attack that list and have the money for it. So at this point, Jerry would be happy as could be to get that. Whether the trustees agree or not, that's something that they're gonna have to vote on in the next meeting or two.
Yep.
But they do have a list. If you go through, I'm not sure if everybody got it, but I'm sure Dan can send you the last list they have, which was actually just their prioritized list, 1 through whatever. And if you went down the list and you took out the sewer, it was somewhere right around 6.6 or $6.8 million. So they do have a list. They do have a prioritized list, and it addresses a lot of the things in the village. The 2 big bumps in the road would be replacement for Village Hall at some point, Halsted Avenue road project, which is $3 to $5 million project. They're doing the engineering study on that right now, and then the seawall. Eventually, whatever that comes in at,
So Dan, Charles.
Yep.
So the tentative budget that's currently posted, and with the deadline having been on Sunday, are you guys planning on posting the revised, which it sounds like there'll be, nominal changes with allocations across the capital and operating budgets that you alluded to?
Augie will update the budget book. If it doesn't happen this week, it's probably next week. I know he's a little short staff right now. He has 1 deputy who's on vacation this week, and another deputy who is recuperating.
Oh, let's not be using the C word, Dan. Let's not be using the C word.
I didn't.
No. I heard through the trustees we had another little bout through the village.
Well, just maybe 1 or 2 people, but we've been, like I said, it's been tough, but we've been relatively fortunate.
So Glenn and Dan, Glenn, the version of the capital budget that you're alluding to, like this is what was in the tentative budget that I have pulled up on the screen. And it sounds
I think what Glenn is referring to is something I put together towards the end of March.
You sent it to the trustee for comment.
Yeah. That's what we discussed. I can forward that to you guys tomorrow.
Yeah.
that'd be great. And that document will make its way into what was submitted. Or is this what's being submitted?
I think Augie will probably include the updated document, but I'll make sure of that.
Yeah, that's what was submitted for to the trustees for comment if they wanted to make any changes in priorities. But again, if the fact that they moved out a bunch of about $300,000 worth of perennials into the operating budget to make it a little tighter, and a couple of the items there are covered by grant. If the trustees so choose, and they decide to spend 6.7 million, which would be 5 million over what we get back in principal what we pay off in principal every year, which be a $5 million commitment, they could virtually do the entire list.
Yeah, and I know we've talked a lot about this, but Dan, if it hasn't already been submitted in that version with priorities consolidating and minimizing this list to what is hoped to be accomplished, and the way that described it, if there's just a couple of items that are grant driven that when removed, put us in a position to have a finite consolidated list of something that is hopefully achievable. That version going into the formal submission would be great if possible. With the deadline having been on Sundays, is it?
Well, no, the deadline is to adopt. You know, the budget document is not, it's just, a tool for the public. So the board has met its statutory requirements.
All right. I mean, I definitely appreciate that. Like the more important thing is that, if it evolves going forward into, being in the version that you're describing, that's what's important. But I'm curious, like for the record, if you will,
Yeah.
what was submitted formally, whether we can confirm whether it included that version versus this version.
Okay.
Just a couple other things. They do have a couple of initiatives that they've started. They're now doing a river cleanup. It looks like we're going to either budget 250 or 350,000. They already did one budget, and they have started cleaning up all the debris in the rivers. And eventually they're going to tie that into the Army Corps of Engineer when they finish their project. But, you've seen a lot of, debris trees and everything from all the stores. So they are actively now looking to clean up, and they do have a program in place to work on and clean all the rivers. They are repaving the entire Harbor Island. That's being done by the Moran Brothers right now. That should be done by the end of May.
Yeah. The only thing we're not doing in Harbor Island is the lot behind the sewage treatment plant, because that's just being used.
That.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and then they're gonna, hopefully they're gonna debate and actively look at what they're gonna do with Village Hall. But that's gonna be a trustee debate. And then you have the what you want to do with the flood out firehouse, one with the other firehouse that we own, but hope they're going to start to address some things that have been on the board for a few years. And with Halsted Avenue and Mamaroneck Avenue, and if they address Village Hall and the sewer project, a lot of the capital projects are going to be behind us, hopefully in 2 or 3 years.
And Dan, do you know where it's located in either this document that I've pulled up or what was submitted, or if this is reflected, what Glenn was alluding to, which would have been, I mean, we can't get to the end of the fiscal, but the year-to-date capital budget expenditures for this year, if you will, to see, what's been done across line item.
You can ask Augie for that. Augie will have that printed.
Is that anywhere in this document?
No, we don't we don't have a column showing what's adopted or what was in this year's capital versus what we've spent. We don't have that in that spreadsheet. But like Glenn said, that's just a report that we can print from our financial system.
Could you send us that, Dan, like a report of year-to-date capital by project?
Yeah.
And just what's been spent? I know there wasn't a capital budget adopted, at least formally. But it would be good to see where we, what's been accomplished. And also, I don't know if you can break out work in progress, but
Well, do you want, so I'll shoot an email to Augie. I'll have it, you might have him print it in one of two ways. I'll have him print it for the capital spending across projects that may have started in earlier fiscal years. Um, because,
Yeah, Dan, Augie has a report that what it will do is it'll say, it'll list every single open project,
okay,
anything that we added this year. And then what it will do is it will have the spending for this year. The
Okay.
only thing it will show is the spending. He can extend it and also show the spending for previous years and show you how long the project was. But if you do the shorter version, if you put it together with the annual report, auditor's report, you can see where every project's at.
yeah,
Yeah, and I
That-
think we
that would
didn't
be good.
necessarily talk much about that.
Yeah.
At least,
I think, the last time Augie sent that to us was in March. I think at our March meeting, he sent that to us.
yeah,
Where-
I think that could be a valuable tool. Would be, as you're looking at a 5-year plan, and there's live that have allocations, and if you're taking the prior year to date, and even before, prior years, you can then see across what's contributing to a total for a project that's being budgeted going forward, and to have that context.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, is there any sense yet on the schedule for the Army Corps project? I know there's this big meeting on the 18th. But in other words, if a resident says, well, when is this project going to start and what's going to be the first phase? Do we know that yet?
so right now, it's in the design phase. There are basically 4 phases to the project. And we'll see. There's 4, what I'm gonna call structural phases, and then there's what's called non-structural work. And non-structural work is things like home elevations, that stuff that doesn't occur in the river. So the first component of the project is the replacement of the Ward Avenue Bridge. The second component of the project is the replacement of the Waverly Avenue Bridge, which is, the town is doing that. They should actually hopefully be out to bid sometime this summer. The third phase is the the Columbus Park work at the confluence and the overflow culvert. And then the fourth phase is the channel work along the Sheldrake and Mamaroneck rivers. And it kind of has to work in that sequence because when you do a flood mitigation project, you have to work from the bottom up. Because if you work from the top down, if you cleared up an obstruction at the top, it's just gonna get stuck at the next obstruction down the way.
So Dan, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why is the village doing the Waverly Avenue Bridge instead of it being part of the ACE project?
The village, it's the town that's doing it.
Oh,
But
the town,
so
okay.
the town, I don't know if you recall kind of the various discussions. One of the things we did in working with the Corps is we had them remove certain aspects, components of a project with the bridge removals so what would happen is they would be able to increase the overall cost benefit ratio.
Mhm.
And, we're getting so the Hillside Avenue Bridge, which is, when everything's said and done, is gonna cost somewhere around 400, sorry, it's 29, about $4.6 million. The village's share of that is gonna be about $300,000. Everything else, we got funding from, the town of Rye and the town of Amerenik will each contribute about 300,000, and the rest is coming from grants. For the Waverly Avenue Bridge, they have a grant from the state. They're gonna get another grant from Westchester County. So the town's overall share is gonna be pretty minimal.
Okay,
Yeah. We have a little bit of cost there because we're doing the walkways, right? We're gonna be doing the walkways around the bridge.
The Waverly Avenue Bridge?
Yeah, the Waverly Avenue Bridge.
Yes, but that's a separate project.
Yeah, well, just so they know if anybody sees Waverly Avenue Bridge,
yeah.
well, understand we're doing some sidewalk work, pedestrian walkways around the bridge
Yeah,
that we agreed to, but the actual bridge is being done by the town.
Yeah, but help me, Dan. You said there are 4 phases to the ACE project.
yep,
And the portions, and of course, the good news is it's all 100% federal money, as I understand it.
that's correct.
Okay,
except the Waverly Avenue Bridge.
okay, except for Waverly Avenue. So it's 88 million, is that the amount?
Yeah, it's 88 or 89.
Okay, and will the 88 or 89, whatever the number is, it's a sizable number, will that be spent on the Columbus Park, the rivers in Ward Avenue Bridge? Are those,
I mean, it'll be spent on the various components of the project. I mean, there may be some, they have to pay for some easements and things like that. But I mean, everything that's being spent is gonna be in association with one of those components. And then there are some home elevations too.
all right, the home elevations will be funded by the feds?
Yep.
Okay,
Right, but it doesn't cover 100% of the cost for the homeowners.
I don't know the mechanics of that yet.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I mean,
They've said so.
okay.
You know, if people have to move out, they have to pay for housing.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Yeah.
things like if you have a deck off your house and they raise your house, they're not replacing your deck.
Yeah.
You know, so there's cost to a homeowner.
Now, to go back to the river
Well,
drive,
let me just, Len, was that the answer to the question you're looking
well,
for?
yeah, I'm just, what I was trying to get, there's obviously, you guys are doing a lot. I mean, I saw the email from Jerry, at dredging the river, there's a lot of work going on. There's no doubt about that. And actually, it's great.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get a sense of, because just in talking to people in general about, well, there's this big project, but it's been years since it's been, talked about. So when's it gonna start? Especially the part that's funded by the federal government.
Okay,
So we have Ward Avenue in Waverly, or Waverly being done, by the town, I guess, primarily. And so I was just trying to get a sense of, okay, the Army Corps is not responsible for that project, right?
Waverly Avenue Bridge?
The Waverly, right?
Well, I mean, no, I mean, the town of Amerenik is undertaking that project,
Yeah,
with, federal, I mean, it's coming from, money from the Federal Highway Administration. But, I mean, it's not Army Corps
okay.
project.
But
And
Ward
then-
Avenue is part of the Army
Yeah.
Corps.
But
Okay.
the bridge itself, the design of the bridge was coordinated with the Army Corps. So
Okay,
the town's engineer, same with Hillside, they've been in contact with and discussions with the Corps about the proper design of those bridges so that they're constructed to complement and enhance the benefits of the Army Corps project.
okay. Now, I remember seeing, and correct me if I'm wrong, looking at the Army Corps, the documents on that project that are on the village's website. It talked a lot about, as I recall, the Halsted Avenue Bridge.
That's- that's county owned.
Yeah,
Okay, but is there any work as part of the ACE project that's going to be done on that particular bridge?
On the bridge itself, no. But the overflow culvert
Yeah,
is designed to move that water in such a fashion that it does not get hung up or, stopped at those two 90-degree turns in the river between the Metro North Bridge and the Halsted Avenue Bridge.
okay, so there is gonna be some work there. I guess it's on the, I remember reading about like
Yeah.
the channel or something. I wasn't quite
Yeah.
sure. I don't recall. It was a while ago.
Yeah, no, they're not proposing to replace that bridge.
Yeah, okay.
So if the project's in the design phase now, how do we know what is and isn't gonna be done?
What do you mean? I don't understand the question.
All right, you said that the project is currently in the design phase.
That's correct.
So if they're first designing now, how do we know down the road what will or won't be done? If they haven't finished the design phase, unless I misunderstand what the.
Well, no,
design-
they told us when we had our kickoff meeting, we asked about what the phases were. And that's what they told us. The first phase is Ward. The second phase is Waverly. The third phase is the work at the confluence, and the fourth phase is to work your way up. But like I said, you have to work your way from the bottom on up when doing a flood mitigation project.
Got it. Okay,
It would seem, Alan, that the next question would be is, okay, those are the 4 or 5 phases if you count the home elevations. So when is phase 1 going to start? And then when is phase 2 going to start, and so
Yeah.
on? So I'm assuming that this will be a multi-year project. No
Oh,
doubt.
absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years. I have no idea.
I think you
Yeah.
have, with that might be a big announcement.
I'm pretty sure that if they don't mention that in their presentation, it will be the first question asked.
Yes, that's what. Yeah.
by
I
many
suspect
people.
you're right.
Yeah,
So just to finish out a bridge talk a little bit, they are finishing replacing the bridge on Boston Post Road. I'm sure we've all seen the big crane.
Yeah,
Out
yeah.
there. And then the Tompkins Avenue Bridge, which was damaged during the storm, I believe is being examined now, and we're looking to get FEMA recovery because it was damaged during Ida. Is that correct, Dan?
yeah. What we're looking to do is, if we're gonna replace that bridge, we don't want to replace it in its current configuration. We want to replace it in a configuration like Hillside and Waverly that complements and enhances the benefits of the Army Corps project. And I asked them last February about this, February of 2021, not 2022.
Mhm.
So this was pre-Ida. And they said, if you're going to design it, if you're going to replace it, you replace it with deeper abutments. So what I've done, I've been talking with FEMA because I want to do this as a project where we do it the right way, that, is a long-term fix instead of just, getting us a replacement of a bridge that is, hydraulically lacking. We'll leave it there.
Yeah, yeah.
So what they've asked of me is to provide them, that's FEMA, for us to provide them with a scope of services and cost estimate, about what would be entailed with the like for like replacement, and then also the enhanced replacement to complement the core project. I have retained our bridge engineer, HVEA, to provide that scope to FEMA. So we're working on it, but they need some additional data from us before they would agree with us as far as our project approach.
Yeah, the last project that I guess everybody is talking about would be the dam replacement. And from what I understand with that is we were getting the legal opinion of what we're responsible for and what the waterworks was responsible for. And that's supposed to be presented to the trustees, either the next meeting or the meeting after. Is that correct?
I know the opinion was requested from the village attorney. I think it'll be for next meeting or the one after that.
I thought Tom sent out the document saying that the village was responsible for the maintenance of the dam, which we clearly haven't done, but
Certain maintenance.
Yeah, I,
That's what's clarified by the attorney.
yeah, yeah.
I think that dam has to stay. It will kill us in Harbor Heights if it's gone.
I think they're looking
Yeah.
at three things. One, keep the dam, one, modify the dam, three, replace the dam, and they're gonna do a study to see which is best for residents. And I'm sure they'll have many hearings and much input on it.
Well, I had heard the other option of just dismantle the dam, which would be horrible. And, forget the amount of water that would come through, the amount of crap that would come downstream would also be horrible. The DPW is always clearing the grates. If there is no dam, all that crap comes downstream.
Well, the first thing that has to be straightened out is if any of those are gonna be done with the dam, is it the village responsibility or the waterworks responsibility?
Yep.
And that's what they're trying to straighten out now. Somebody's got to pick up the check at the end of the dinner. We're not quite sure who's got alligator arms.
Nice way of putting it.
And generally speaking, if you take like the village hall as an example on the screen for the $13 million in a given year, and that's obviously a big project that would probably be allocated over multiple years. But generally speaking, are we not to take these in this format at face value that the work is being done in a consolidated year and that this is more of a placeholder?
Well, no, I imagine what you do with a project like that is the work will occur over several years, but there would be one capital budget account that's created.
Yeah,
A capital budget account exists until the funding is either spent or deauthorized by an elected body.
Okay, so that's consistent then.
Yeah, I mean, that's consistent because, you would have a project. I mean, I don't think we would, we would have we would bid everything out, have one contract to do the work. We wouldn't bid out, phase one, build the first floor, then, next year, phase two, build the second floor.
A good example of that is when the waterworks did Flagler Avenue. It was authorized to spend $4 million. And then that $4 million was spent over 3 or 4 years as the project was done. And then all Augie does is Augie each year puts the amount of money that, was spent as the bills come in. And eventually he'll bundle it all and he'll bond it. And once the project is actually done and completely bonded, then the project comes off of his list.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally understood that capital projects, can and do last across multiple fiscal years.
yeah, that makes sense.
The other thing is, you hope with Village Hall, if the way they design it, if you have a new police department and a new courthouse, that your totally highly qualified, intelligent members of staff might be able to go out try to get some grant. Hint, hint, Dan. So you just don't know
Yeah,
exactly.
and forgive me, I mean, I as a 5-year capital plan budgeting tool, though, to have in conjunction with this a projection of what is going to be spent each year, I think is necessary to determine what your 5-year plan is going to look like.
Well,
Except
I don't think
Charles, that determines what your 5-year operating plan looks like,
Yes, it
yeah,
does.
not
Yeah.
a capital project. They're two different things.
You could always take have a different have your capital plan sheet and then have a second sheet that would estimate more what the cost per year is for what you're looking for, Charles. That way you
Yeah.
can you're going to take the $13 million hit, but it's probably going to be over 4 years, and you could always have a secondary sheet for that to see what the actual cost to the operating budget would be each year.
yeah, I mean, I think yeah, because we also need to do is, I wouldn't want to put in a document that, we're gonna spend, 3 million one year, 3 million the next year, 3 million year three, but then ask the board for a $9 million appropriation in year one.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you need both for planning purposes. It's, it's cash flow, and Ellen's point, being able to correlate that back to, your
Right.
projected interest expense.
But I think that gets to the point you've been making for the last year and a half that we've all heard. I'm not sure anybody else has, is that how can you have an operating plan without a capital plan?
Right.
But, part of it also, when we would, if we had a project like that, there are probably, several ways we would, go about paying our bills. First, we could, just, pay our bills out of, with the fund balance for cash flow purposes. And then once we go out to debt, we would just reimburse the fund balance. Or you could, start out with a short-term ban for the first couple of years, and then once everything is finished, you can convert it to the long-term debt, because you get lower. That's a pretty standard process, because you get lower interest rates on your bans
Yeah,
than
and
you
then-
do your long-term debt.
And Augie's explained to us that he likes to just do it once a year.
Yeah,
The cost savings of dealing with the attorneys and the bond people and everything else, instead of
Yeah.
paying them times, pay them once a year.
yep,
I mean, I think what Charles is asking for, another way of putting it, is the cash flow. And a project like Village Hall, it's interesting in that nobody, at least at this stage, nobody knows how that project is going to flow out over time, I assume. It's not, hasn't been designed yet. I don't believe. And so,
Yeah, they're not even sure if they want to just refurbish the old one, completely build a new one, or do both.
yeah, so at this point, since we don't know what we're going to do, we have a placeholder as a budget, I guess. It's you may not be able to count it down to the penny. So, it's an important placeholder. But clearly, in order to do the second sheet that we've been talking about, which I agree with Charles is important, it seems not just on this project, but on any project, we'd have to have a sense of the timing and phasing. That may
Yeah, I
not be, that may not be true in most projects.
yeah. You'd only have that once you get really into your detailed design.
Yes, right, and your bid and award and so on.
Yeah, so I mean, you wouldn't even know that until, probably 6 months to a year before you're actually ready to go out to bid.
But you almost have to do it because if you're committing to a project now that's gonna get done and it's going to project over multiple years, and you're in the process of identifying how that phasing is going to be allocated across multiple years as a planning tool, as that spreads, if there's a project in a subsequent year that you also know or project that you're going to need to do or would very much like to do.
Yeah, but Charles, we could do that in concept, but until you have concrete numbers and idea of how the project's gonna,
I get it, but you have to do it.
yeah, but Charles, I say you can do it in concept. I can't get you down to the penny.
No, and I understand that, but it as a planning tool, if you don't try to do that, and you're committing to doing a project now that is being deliberated and it's going to spread across multiple years, and you know that something's coming that has to get done. That's the work. That's the analysis.
And
I
we
mean,
do that. Charles,
if
but-
we just put it on an easy basis, let's say that project gets approved, whatever year it gets approved, and it's gonna cost us $4 million a year in funding. Taking Glenn's analysis for this year, where we have 6 million that we could absorb, that 4 million a year for this one project means we only have 2 million left for other projects.
or,
And that
well,
becomes critical.
well, I mean, what it means is that policy decisions have to be made.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the idea. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a
That's-
budget,
that's
it's
the
a
point.
budget, it's a budget, it's a projection, but it's something. You know, the 13,000,005, I get that as the placeholder in the context of spreadsheet 1. But on spreadsheet 2, as you're jockeying around the projects that you think you want to do over 5 years and you're spreading them, you then get an idea of, well, these 2 or 3, it's just, there's just not going to be room for them. They need to get.
I don't disagree with that. I just wouldn't make that a public document that's part of the budget.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Charles, I certainly agree with you, but on this particular project, I mean, you could do a simplistic approach and say 4 million a year or divide by whatever number we'd like. The problem with this project, and maybe true of others, is it sounds like we don't know the scope at all.
Right.
So if we don't know what we're going to do, it becomes extremely problematic. And so in other cases and other roads, like what is it? The one above it, the $3.8 million project, what's that? Is that Tompkins Avenue bridge replacement? No. I think so. But, that might be easier to put a phase, establish a phasing.
The thing is, if you know there's gonna be $5 million, let's say, Village Hall over 3 years, well, then what you need to do is, you get mountain principal, add the 5 million to wherever the capital projects are. And for every 5 million over whatever you pay back in principal is going to cost you about 1% 2 years down the line when it's bonded. And that's basically your formula. So the trustees would have to realize 2 years down the line, you're going to have a 1% increase in debt service. How are you going to pay for it?
I think all Charles is recommending, and Charles, if I'm putting words in your mouth, that's wrong, jump in and correct me. But in order for the board to make informed decisions, they need more information, as opposed to a one lump number of 13.5 million in 1 year. That's not reality. The reality is it's gonna be bonded over time and there's a operating budget impact of X. And there's no clue with any of these projects what that impact is.
Yeah, but so as a general rule of thumb, when you go out to long-term debt, it's basically, the annual cost is 90,000 for every $1 million.
And
Right.
which is why I say it's about 1%
Yeah,
for $5 million towards the budget 2 years in the future, because you don't start to pay until the year after you bond.
Right, but I think, I mean, having done budgeting, being responsible for a $400 million budget and trying to get senior executives to make decisions on what to do and what not to do, the more information that's simply provided, not complicated, that lays it out very clearly, you're gonna get better decisions in the long run. And I think that's really all Charles is saying. You can't look at a capital plan separately from an operating plan. It needs to be done in conjunction.
Yeah, and these are tools
Yeah,
that are not binding. And I think that that's a critical point. It's not binding. It's being used for decision-making that impacts public interest.
yeah,
And by being transparent with the public as to how the decisions were arrived at is only in theory of benefit to everybody involved. Now, if somebody is going to use that granularity against the decisions that were made, that's their prerogative. But I think generally, both the functionality of it as a tool and the transparency are good reasons to try to move toward doing that.
Yes. And like I said, it's pretty simple, you know that as Dan said, if you're going to bond and take $1 million worth of debt, it's going to cost you $90,000 over the course of the bond, which is usually 20, 30, 40 years, depending on what it is. In 2 years, you're going to have to come up with $90,000 for every million that you go over what is being retired by payment of principal. And
we do have a debt service schedule, so we know what we're paying every year and what's,
this year you had 1.7 million in principal coming off.
yeah.
So whatever, that's why I said, if you did the entire budget 2 years up the road, you're going to have to find $450,000 for funding, unless of course the budget comes in higher and you decide to take money out of the fund balance and pay some of the capital projects, which you're also allowed to do. And we've done some of that in the past.
Like I said, we only make one long-term issue for the project. We don't, we don't, for a new village hall, we're not gonna do a debt issue for 6 million one year and 7 million the next.
Yeah.
We're gonna,
That's what they look at the total cost of the project,
Yeah.
and then what the trustees adopt, and then Augie forms a fund for it. But at that point, there's nothing the matter with having that and having a supplemental to give to the trustees that say, if you pass this and it costs X amount per year, this is what your costs are going to be up the road. So,
well, I mean, our costs up the road are gonna be whatever the final debt issue is.
exactly, and and how it's paid for, Do you want to bond it? Is it
Yeah.
want to pay some of it out of your surplus, or do you want to raise taxes a little bit right away and pay for some of it per year? And that's the decision that you put before the trustees. Here's the 3 ways, if you pass the project, that it has to be paid for. And, and then they, these are your long-term costs. If, in order to do the capital budget, if you need to, borrow $7 million in 2 years, this is what your costs are gonna be. You have to decide whether you want to, pay some of it down now. If there's a surplus, put money, from the surplus towards it, or deal with it and make whatever budget adjustments you want to make when it comes up into, whether it's cutting expenses, anticipating more revenue, or raising taxes. And those are your only choices. Or again, the other one is, once something like this is approved, that's when you can try to aggressively go after grant money. So like when we approved the sewer project for $5 million, we didn't have $5 million grant money. That came after. And that's another wild thing. You don't know what grant money might be available to offset the cost of $13 million for the Village of Mamaroneck. It's something that you might be able to explore beforehand, but a lot of times until you actually have the project, nobody's going to let you apply for grant money. But Dan would be the expert on that.
Well, you have to have when you apply for grant money, you usually have not necessarily a shovel-ready project, but, a good estimate on what you're gonna be spending. That's, either you have a preliminary plan or, some level of detailed design. But again, I mean, I think that we can, in terms of annual expenses, I think of a capital project, we can, up until, we have, detailed design, we can probably, provide some conceptual numbers as to what the annual cost would be. I don't know how granular you're looking to get on that, though.
And again, Augie would currently have the list of all approved projects, how much was spent on the projects this year, the grand total spent on the projects, and how much money we need to spend in the future on the projects.
Oh, yeah,
Or if the project isn't bonded yet. That would all come out in the under the capital projects 2022.
Yeah.
And then Augie give you the sheet. And I believe if you ask them for the extended sheet, there's also columns in there for the overall money spent on the project from its inception.
Can I make a recommendation? It's now 8:30. Can we move on? Because we keep going round and round with the same conversation.
17 fat diets, 5 kids, 3 grandkids.
Yeah, I guess the next item on the agenda was to try to map out, the upcoming year for, where we dedicate our time, where we can be the most effective to contribute to all these efforts. I feel like Tom should be here for that. Do you guys want to shelve that to next month and we can put thought into it and get Tom's feedback or bounce around any ideas now? But I think it's important that he's fully engaged in that conversation.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay, are we all in agreement? We'll shelve that then. I'm sure everybody has really good ideas that we want to share, but we can pick that up next month if everybody's in agreement. And with that, we have a motion then to adjourn to next month.
I make the motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dan, thanks a lot for joining us tonight. Super helpful.
Actually, I apologize for being late, but thank
No
you.
problem.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dan. Very
Thank you,
helpful.
Dan.
Much appreciated, Dan. Hopefully we'll see you live in the next couple of months.
Well, we're gonna be back in the courtroom for the next meeting, at least some of us. So,
I look forward to seeing you then.
okay, thank you.
Good night.
I know.
Good
Aye.
night.